All right, Groove-tastic. It is June 2nd, Tuesday. It's the standards team meeting. Yay. Any announcements for today?
Sorry.
I would like to announce that the ever so awesome OpenJS World and Collab Summit are coming up soon. I'm gonna just keep saying that until it happens, and then I'll be sad because I'll be like, what else am I gonna talk about now that this event is over? So obviously register to attend both events if you can, they're free. We as a standards team need to decide what, if any, sessions we want to host during Collab Summit, and also would encourage anybody interested to reach out to any member here to talk about standards if that's something you're interested in too. So that's yeah, that's what I got. And it's TC39 week, so they're meeting this week, and so we're missing a number of our regular compatriots today. So best of luck to them on that call today. Let's dive into our first agenda item, which is number 91, potentially blocking module attributes proposal. This is from Gus, who I don't believe has joined our any of our meetings yet today. Gus Kaplan is a member of the TC39 committee.
Is this the one that we discussed last time? No, I guess
no.
This
is a pretty recent. This is a pretty recent and active discussion where, unfortunately, the participants who've been most active on this are not here. So it may not be.
Yeah, and I think we just talked generically about whether or not the foundation should block.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it seems very specific. This is the first I've seen a specific proposal.
Yeah.
I don't think we did not have consensus on the ability to block or not, is my interpretation.
I'm looking at the issue, and a lot of the conversation is Miles and Jordan again, who were going back and forth last meeting. But I do see, Donovan, you were commenting as well. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, I was just trying to kind of, they were focused on the issue at hand, and I was more concerned with process and how the standards body should fit. And it seems to me that this particular conversation is very specific to that one issue. And they're even having, to the best of my knowledge, still having trouble resolving it within the modules team. So I don't know what role this group could possibly play in solving that particular issue. But what I do think we could do is kind of come back to our process and set a standard for what this group should do and what representatives should do moving forward in their participation in other processes. Now, I think we can get a high level approach to that, but then there'll have to be some breakdown for each of different standards bodies just because they function in different ways. But I think the first thing we got to do is kind of take this issue off the table and focus on a process for the working group. And all I was trying to do in my comments was get them to come back to, are we thinking about the projects that are part of this foundation and how do they feel about this? Because that seems like our job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that seems like it's a timely process. I mean, the time intensive process.
Agreed.
So,
So I guess what a little bit concerns me about this is that I'm not sure that our repository, and I'm grateful to know, I'm grateful for this group to know that there's a complex issue that's, involving a lot of discussion, but I don't know that we've set real clear guidance on for projects and for our community members of like what to do with this type of information and what they can expect us to do with it. So like, for example, just reading the title and a bit of the issue, would this individual expect us to support the block, or, you know, like what is it what outcome is it that they're seeking in raising the issue to us? So
yeah. It's interesting too that, you know, Chris Hiller from Mocha is commenting from a Mocha perspective, Emily, you know, as well. So yeah, I don't know if this is the best place to fully flesh this out, but I guess it's good that it is, you know, multiple project owners getting involved.
Yeah, and
some of the
awesome,
specific discussion has also moved on to continue on the proposal zone repo and the issues there.
Got it.
But I mean, I was interested in finding out about this. I had no idea it was about these things, but I'm an interested party to some extent. So I'm happy for this issue to have been brought to light, no matter what the actual question about it was that brought it to us.
For me, it just, again, big picture seems a little reactive too, as opposed to where, from a standard setting perspective, do we proactively want to engage on what issues with the projects?
Mm-hmm.
It's also new. And I understand you know, a lot of folks are sort of already in the standards rhythm and they're sort of jumping right in the middle. But I think there's some catching up to do for others probably.
Yeah, and I think the resounding thing I'm hearing here is like, what is our scope, and like, where's the boundary? Where's their scope? And, you know, it just seems like it seems kind of like a bleed over, you know, like into OpenJS land from TC39, and like, I get it, but what do they hope to achieve? You know, is this something that we have, you know, like, do they want us to have the official say and the authority to block proposal? I mean, it just seems like, that seems like a TC39 decision, you know? So
yeah, I think kind of what you're saying is like in the worst read scenario is like, it's a battle, it's an argument that's maybe formed somewhere else, and they're kind of changing turf to sort of see if and that's obviously a negative read of this, and I don't read it that way, because I'll be, you know, more productive about it, which is rather, if there's a sentiment among JavaScript projects, we should theoretically be a great place for them to come to find that sentiment. And so, you know,
I'm also coming into this, you know, just having this context like for the first time. So, you know, I'll just put that out there. I'm not like fully versed in everything that's going on here, but just as a top level, having seen this, but having not seen this before, I just, you know, that was like kind of the first, seems like it's sort of a bleed out from a conversation that happened in TC39. But yeah, no, I think having a safe space to bubble up conversations to have cross project, I mean, that's obviously what we're trying to do. So that's good.
So is there anything we want to do to like action on this issue? Do we like, I could, there's a couple of ideas that I have, but I'm curious what y'all would think.
From my point of view, this is speaking a bit to the uncertainty of what a person who is active in an OpenJS project and who is participating in some standards body like the TC39, how should they be acting, and how should they be seeing their role and this group's role in the whole discussion and negotiation about standards? Because it kind of gets fuzzy, because people who are involved in OpenJS are also involved in quite a few other things, and they are participating in those other things and through those other things in TC39. And still, I mean, all of these other bodies kind of expect people to state their affiliations. And so if they say that they're coming from the OpenJS Foundation, and if they're thinking of, in whatever role they are, possibly blocking or taking some action, like here, what should they be doing about it? How should they be communicating with this group? And all of this is fuzzy even to me. And I think it's gonna be fuzzy to other people as well about what they ought to be doing and how they ought to be handling and communicating with us.
So I think like to your first question, and I take this more as like open discussion, not, you know, not that I'm not proposing anything specific here, but like in my mind, a project like message format or any of our other OpenJS projects, you know, if they're made aware of some language feature that is happening in TC39, ideally they've hopefully learned about that because the standards group is surfacing information like this that's interesting to them. And if they have an opinion on how that should fall, they're also surfacing that opinion and discoursing on the proposal as, you know, project maintainer of message format, not, you know, as the voice of the foundation, because there's just too many voices within the foundation for us to kind of come up. And I don't think we want to encourage everybody to say that they speak on behalf of the foundation. I think that would be a bit disastrous. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, and I think going back to the mission was sort of that facilitation role. And if I think about a specific issue blocker, for me, that means that you've been really proactive and had these lengthy consensus building discussions about, we need to really go to bat on this one specific thing. And I think that would just be a really rare occasion to, you know, to really need a neutral industry organization to go to bat on one specific thing, or to even to have the ability to reach consensus among all the projects and members. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's, for a lot of the stuff that the committee may take up, the TC39 committee may take up, it's for better or worse, a lot of it's like personal preferences, or even like school of computer science that they went, you know what I mean? Like there's those variables that influence how somebody thinks about how the language should change. But, you know, and so we're like, it would be hard for me to say that the foundation should try and, you know, come out in you know, with a certain position on something like that. If it were something a bit more drastic, like, you know, let's remove the Boolean from the language or something, I could say that, you know, I would hope that, you know, our group would be able to, I don't know, but that's also kind of how do you decide whether something's like severe enough to come up with a position on.
So do we have specific recommendations on how to address this specific issue?
This specific issue may change in the next day or two drastically.
Yeah. So that's a good point, Dominic or Donovan. We don't have, like, they're probably discussing it now, right? Like, so it may be moot. But I think pattern-wise, we like that Gus brought this issue because it raised awareness. We like that as a result, members of the OpenJS community who are maintainers of projects were able to say, here's my opinion on it, and promote that discourse. And I think we like that conversation about the proposal specifically continued on the thread where the proposal lives, right? Because that's where it should go. What we need to do probably is like describe that pattern as something we want to promote, but also reinforce that we're not, as a foundation, ready to commit to blocking any proposal advancement.
So we like the flagging in the dialogue, but the call to action is not necessarily the outcome that we need.
Right.
For some of these.
Right. And so frankly, I think everything about this is fine with the exception of what I infer as a request to block.
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, I think this is good.
But on the other hand, the discussion not leading to a clear support for that block is also quite relevantly showing that, you know, there isn't support for that. And that was a discussion that should and needed to happen before the action itself took place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But again, a call to action on a proposal that happens in real time, again, I just think is impractical for an entity like ours a little bit.
Well, especially with an entity like ours with 7 days notice. I mean, you know, if you were doing this to like a small consulting company that was on TC39 and there's 4 people, I'm sure 4 people could come up with a decision on that, but
I'm sure it takes weeks for one, you know, actual company to come up with a point of view, let alone several.
Yeah. So that's certainly something to, Good. Okay.
I like this. Yeah.
I think what I might do is summarize this conversation on the issue thread, just so that the folks who weren't able to make it can kind of hear see that we discussed it and what we thought. And I'm sure we'll learn more next week or 2 weeks from now after TC39 is over.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next issue is number 84, which was referenced in 91, which is the delegate expectations. I think what we need to do here is open the pull request with the some of the expectations that we did have consensus on and were documented in the last notes, I think. So with the because the thing that's off here is we don't have consensus on blocking. So oh, there's been in more okay. So I think that's what we need to do to kind of be able to move forward on this. I don't know if y'all agree. I'm just seeing that there was some other comments since 91 was opened. Yeah, do you want to spend time on this, or should we move to the next issue?
We've spent a lot of time, so.
Okay, great. And then 83, which is from Jordan, who is not here. So I would, which is his request to participate in TC39 as an OpenJS delegate. As we pointed out, he's also currently participating as an invited expert. So this is not time sensitive, and so I'd rather not discuss it without his presence. So that leads us to number 43 / the new issue that that Ben brought in our standards channel, which is Unicode.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Yeah, I don't have much to say other than I know that we've expressed the interest of creating like a liaison relationship. So I think Emily has more context to what that looks like and what that, what we want to achieve with something like that. And I was actually pretty interested in hearing more about his thoughts, and also, if Steven joins, that sort of thing too. But yeah, just in the interest of maybe throwing my hat in the ring to help with that. Is there any updates that you can give us, Emily?
I've got as much information as anyone else, that just we've been accepted.
Okay.
As background, my position on this is that I maintain message format, an OpenJS Foundation project, and message format is a JavaScript implementation of the ICU message format, which discussion then started earlier a while back on the ECMA 402 working group, and in that context started working on a message format sub working group, which then ended up sort of moving to being actually organized under the Unicode and having an even wider scope of starting to think about, should we really just update the whole of ICU message format to a new version 2 effectively. And when this happened, I realized that, hey, I want to continue participating in this, and there would be this possibility of having the OpenJS Foundation continue to, well, become a member of the Unicode consortium without any money needing to exchange hands. And this seemed like a good idea for this particular reason, but also a good idea in the general sense that Unicode's kind of important to JavaScript. And therefore it would be good for us all to be a happy cooperative family of foundations and consortia and what else. So my interest here continues to be rather specifically the message format sub-working group of the CLDR working group, because effectively that working group is redefining the specification that the library that is the OpenJS project that I'm primarily a part of is defined by. So kind of significant there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is probably the right place to talk about this then, because there are different people and representatives within our context, including you. We've got Steven, we've got a few others, within the context of ICU, within Node, or within, as you said, working within these subgroups within Unicode. And I think like there's room for a common place because this is all coming at the same time where there's also a new subcommittee within Unicode called ICU4X. And I think you've probably heard of that, Emily, but they're going to be targeting ECMA 402 for not just JavaScript anymore, so for Rust and for other languages and things. So there's a lot of reason to have some kind of like crossover standards parity and conversation between the different people who represent the groups who care about Unicode and INTL and ECMA 402 and that sort of thing. My particular background was a couple years ago I noticed that Node needed a revamp for internationalization because it was working on an old model where there was a lot of downstream, there was kind of upstream, downstream broken things. So I just kind of rebooted internationalization as a new working group for Node. And then through that, like I've sort of stepped my foot into ECMA 402 with TC39 as an invited expert in that. Not that I consider myself an expert, but I'm trying. So so I just kind of stepped into that. So, I guess my scope and my thought process is around, like how are we supporting, ICU and INTL in the context of Node, but then, we have people represent message format and all that kind of stuff. So how do we triangulate these interests into something that's mutually beneficial for our projects like Node now, with Unicode and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it's just a conversation that needs to evolve and have, I mean, maybe the OpenJS standards, is a great place to do that. But yeah, especially, I mean, like now that ECMA 402, ECMA 402 is going to be going into a lot more than just JavaScript. It seems like time to figure this out. Now with the liaison relationship thing, I think it would be good to, define like a few people, I don't know, 2 people or whatever, who are willing to be, I guess, up to speed on both the cross-project council side and the, and the Unicode side, and be able to sort of facilitate that in the middle, that bridge relationship. And I'm definitely interested in like going to the Unicode meetings for ICU and CLDR and that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm sure that Stephen would have more to talk about if he were here too, because when we chatted, he was really excited about all this. So, other than that, another thing is I put up a proposal for a working session at the Lab Summit. So that's going to be a great space to talk about this. So if anybody is interested in the sort of INTL space within JavaScript and what that looks like in Node and message, message format has their own thing going on there too. That'll be really exciting to kind of find that parity cross project.
I think that sounds like a great, place to flush this out even a little bit further during the summit. One thing that I was thinking during this discussion was we do have now 3 different groups that I guess 4 different groups that we're like organizationally affiliated with through nonprofit status, W3C, ECMA International, Unicode Consortium, and the Open Source Initiative. So that's a lot. All of these groups also have their own structure, their own sort of like ways in which if members engage. And it might be a useful thing to do to spend some time over the next few weeks educating ourselves on this committee. Maybe, Emily and Stephen and, maybe y'all can get together and just do a presentation for us that says, here's the lay of the land, and here's how people organize, and we could do the same for W3C and ECMA and OSI. So we're kind of sharing that institutional knowledge, which is often a barrier to entry for people in standards. So that could be a good.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I would definitely be interested in doing that. I was had planned on doing something similar, for the evolution of INTL, like what the heck are these groups, for this collab summit. So I mean, naturally out of that, I might sync with Emily and Stephen to to talk more about like what are they doing, what does it look like, what's the governance like, how does that relate to us, and all that kind of stuff might be really good.
I think that would be a great asset for this group. If that was something that's a bit evergreen, maybe we can. I feel like we started a file that was like resources or something, and so that would be awesome.
Awesome, right? Cool. Well, I think I'm going to the next message format group. Romulo invited me, so I'll see Emily there.
Cool.
At the next session, so that's exciting. And then I'll just continue, talking with you all about getting something ready to share with the group. And would that be best done at? Do you think at the like in the standards scenario here, or at the CPC meeting, or what do you imagine, Jory, as we're sort of educating all of ourselves about how these groups work?
I think that's probably more appropriate in our standards repo.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because we still have a lot of resource organizing and like mind mapping and that kind of stuff to
Totally.
to make for ourselves. So I think that's probably good. Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Shel. Good discussion. Very thoughtful. Are you all okay with me? Oh, go ahead. Joe.
Sorry, just before we move on. Actually, Steven says he's joining now. He had a call. I did drop a link into the chat that he had shared with me. It's a 117-page slide deck, but he says it goes into the stack a little. I think was his words. Yeah. So I know we're kind of wrapping up on this conversation, but he did just message me and say that he's joining now.
Awesome.
I love 117-page slide decks, by the way.
Yeah, I was like, what do you want me to do with this?
That's great.
Yeah.
I guess while he's and I have to now promote this person to panelists. So my question was going to be just quickly: are we groovy to close issue 43 now that the question of should we join has been resolved?
Presuming that also means I get to participate in the message format working group as the OpenJS rep.
I would presume yes, but I shouldn't presume. I presume yes.
It seems like the issue could be closed. You're officially a member, liaison member.
Yay!
So it turns out that it was actually improved in practice, not just in principle, in February. But we just didn't get the action item given to someone to send that around. So it ended up on my plate since I was the one asking. So there you go.
Thanks for joining, Stephen.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you for accepting our membership.
Yes, you're welcome. It wasn't as challenge. It wasn't anything personal. So.
Okay, I'll no longer take it personally. Thank you.
Good.
Was there anything to recap since Stephen was able to join, or I don't know?
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. You recap.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to say, Stephen, that we kind of discussed that, there are multiple people within the context of OpenJS and its projects that represent different aspects of Unicode or interest therein. Liaison folks, people who are interested in being liaisons, people who are interested, for different projects like ICU, CLDR, and that sort of thing. But then also there's message format, which Emily is really active in.
Right.
And we've got, people who have different sort of scopes. So like, how do we use the OpenJS standards body as a place, to elevate the conversations around that, all these different representations to create some kind of cohesion. And I think that seems like to be the work of a liaison type relationship with like the Unicode consortium. What do you imagine that to look like, and what would be most helpful? I know Emily Emily is going to do some liaison work. I'm interested in helping out. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think the most helpful will be is bringing the needs of the community forward. I mean, one of the things about the back in the IOJS days, one thing that was very interesting was that overnight, a large number of language-specific communities grew up around around IOJS. So you had IOJS Russian, Spanish, and so on. And so I think one of the things we see about JavaScript is it's global. It's very global in terms of technologies out there. And so because of that, there is a reach to user requests that may not necessarily be seen by other consumers of Unicode, just to put it that way. I mean, there are things that have come up, and I'll give you a arrow tipped case in point was, list formatting, which is where you say this and that, right, for languages. It's been in Unicode CLDR for a number of years. It's in ICU. It came out. Finally, there's a proposal in ECMA 402. A tweet came out, and someone said, "Wait a second, this doesn't work in Spanish," which is embarrassing. But my point is that it was coming all the way through the JavaScript community that use case and concern actually got some real. I wouldn't say real, but it got some attention that it needed in order to bring it in a technical direction. So all that to say is, I would say in working with Unicode, laying out what are the things on the what are the user concerns that you get coming in. The things off the top of my head from the Node.js repos are things such as time zones. Certainly translation work. I would say just representing those concerns, introducing those in the different TCs that are brought forward. That would be what I would see from that side, and then going kind of conversely is communicating to the user base, thinking of developers, but also integrators and users of JavaScript technologies, that, if I may say it this way, that they have a voice, that there's a way to have these things happen. When we started the CLDR project in early 2000s, one of the things we saw is that among different vendors of software, self included, there was a wide variety of spelling of how you spell the names of months in different languages, and it's not a good variety, right? It's the kind of thing where it's just embarrassing, but it's because there wasn't that coordination. And users might say, well, I can file a report against one software project, I can file a bug against Linux or this, but I can't talk to all of them. I can't. And if my language is underrepresented, and digitally disadvantaged languages, in the Unicode term, is a major focus of Unicode these days. If someone had been told, and I've heard this firsthand, computers just don't work in my language, right? People don't feel they have a voice, and they don't ask the questions that are needed by technology producers to really make things work properly for the users. So I spend a lot of my time trying to disavow people of those types of things. So anyway, that's kind of my top level view of kind of the two directional things, and I think we could look at specific technologies and areas. I've been most directly involved in Node.js, but I know there are many other many international related projects under OpenJS that are relevant to these areas.
That does remind me, Stephen, I think it'd be great for us to reach out to Raphael from Globalize to
right.
to make sure that he's looped in for your session then.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things about CLDR particularly, CLDR split out as the data subdirectory of ICU. And Ben, I don't know if you've gone over some of the general the high level architectural sketch, but basically we said, let's make this a common project rather than just a subdirectory under one implementation ICU, and that widely became adopted by things, Java and Windows come to mind. Picked that up pretty early on, completely unrelated to ICU. And so it would be good to get input from consumers such as Globalize. Back in, Raphael he sat on the panel with me for CLDR, but again, having that voice within CLDR to say, okay, let's make sure that when CLDR updates come in, that that it works well for globalize, for example. Let's get integration. Let's get even continuous integration to make sure that globalize doesn't break when CLDR makes a change. And actually, speaking of CLDR's voting process is opening shortly. And so that would be something where when that announcement goes out, interested parties in the language, particularly, as I mentioned, kind of underrepresented languages, can sign up and be a part of contributing fixes for things in their language in the locale data area. Just thinking through other Unicode areas, the UTC, the technical committee, meets quarterly, and that's where new scripts come in and changes to properties and such. There's the Mochas subcommittee, where those with us being discussed, and then there's also ICU, which has the C and Java components of that. One thing that I've been trying to do is again for Node.js is to have a lot of documentation in place so that I'm not the only one doing these changes, and that's been very successful. And I think that getting that coordination back and forth with Unicode would be very beneficial to have, let's say, bringing in a new ICU version in, or say bringing in a Unicode update to something like when Globalize wants to update and consume a new version of Unicode. What's the procedure to do that and make sure that's well understood on the Unicode side as far as any input. The other thing I was going to mention was IC4X project, which is focused on client side. It's basically it's an upcoming project. Mozilla and Google are probably the most active at this point. It's initially doing implementation in Rust, but it's not as a project. It's not tied to Rust. But the idea is that it's a new client-focused, lighter weight re-implementation, not a port of ICU, that could potentially be what replaces an ICU implementation in a browser, in a JavaScript container, and such, with emphases on speed and packaging size and such. So it's something fun to watch, and it's focused around the ECMA 402, the ECMAScript International API. That's its focus as far as features.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Any thoughts or questions on the? There's a lot of directions I could take those, obviously.
Yeah, it seems like the broadening scope, with an emerging group like ICU4X, it'll also be good to establish this relationship now, so that we can create maybe even, I don't know, I kind of see it maybe as like a template for a liaison relationship to help expand that into the different projects that also need that. So we need like if it's ICU4X with Rust, or
right,
whatever the target is. Seems like a good time to create that relationship now. So that's super exciting.
Right. Yeah, and the idea is that it would be it's targeted to Rust, but it would then compile to WASM. That could be invoked through JavaScript, could be invoked as C, could even replace things that are using ICU4C or ICU4J today. I think Dart, Go, there are other environments where you wouldn't need a new, let's say ICU for Go. You wouldn't need to have a whole separate project for that. You could pick this up and use it.
That's awesome.
So I'm just kind of time checking us because we're about 5 minutes to the top of the hour.
Sure.
And this is an important, good conversation. So I want to make sure that we're kind of capping it so that we can pick it back up in our next session. What should I note to help us bookmark this so we can effectively come back to it next time?
I think, like we were mentioning before, and Stephen, I don't believe you were on the call when we were talking about this, even though you did share an awesome slide deck. We, within the standards organization of OpenJS, you know, there's going to be a few bodies now that are represented, and now including Unicode. And so we need to think about how we can educate educate the people in the cross project council through the standards committee, like, you know, like what how Unicode consortium actually works, you know, like, and how we can best go about you know, working within their governance and supporting them, and what that might mean conversely as well. So if we can create, like, you know, maybe you and me and Emily, if he wants to, or whatever, we can you know, kind of take team and edit a slide deck and you know, present that to the group at another meeting, standards meeting here soon.
Yeah, and I can maybe ask around and see if I know Alalita Sharma, who's on the board of Unicode, expressed strong strong endorsement for this project, and might be willing to speak from the Unicode side, and I think she might give a good view into that. And she also worked with Raphael, for example, very closely. So
that'd be awesome.
I think she'd be willing to do that. I can ask about that. So maybe send me the details of when this meeting is, and I can ask if she'd be willing to do that.
Great. Yeah, I'll send you the calendar invite.
Great.
Cool. All right.
Jory, can I ask a quick question?
Totally.
What has to happen to close issue 64? It's Emily's issue about participating in the Unicode message format working group.
Oh, good question.
Because closing issues is cool.
Closing issues is cool. It's the coolest. I
think our gig can make my proposition now that we can use accepted. Can file in another issue about
we haven't gone
the
public
list of. Except this is live on YouTube, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, exactly. But when we promote it to the world.
So I think one thing that we haven't done particularly well in this repo is document who our representative is. So what I would say is let's open a pull request and include, I don't know if we want to put that on the README or if we want to put it in a different file or something like that, but just a pull request that documents who our rep is for these different spaces. We're still resolving OSI and TC39, but for the W3C, it's been Brian Cardell, and here we can have Emily, and we'll just figure out how we want to update that moving forward. But I think that's it. I think that's really all we need.
My interest continues to be just the message format. You sounded earlier in
I lost, it might be on my side, but I lost a bit of what you said, Emily.
He's breaking up a little.
Okay, yeah, I'm assuming what you said was, I'm really interested in message format primarily, but if I want to help out with the facilitation of liaison relationship, is that what you're saying on the other side of things?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, definitely. I'm interested in that. So I'd like to, maybe we can, like you said, Jory, figure out the scope and figure out who wants to, be where.
Yeah, and I don't think even the W3C, you can have alternate representatives.
Yeah.
So, it's not.
You can definitely have alternates. In fact, that's in some of my earlier calls today, was dealing with alternates and things. So Emily, do you need anything as far as getting started with message format working group? I think you have the contact information. Great.
I'm good. Already participating.
I think Steve.
Great, excellent. Yeah, I have not been participating where I'd like to, although I just as of today, a colleague of mine who actually sits a few meters away from the chair of Message Format Working Group from IBM is going to start start participating. So that'll be great to get some participation from that side.
That's awesome.
Good. Okay, excellent.
Woohoo!
Super interesting stuff too.
All right. Thanks everybody for a nice and productive standards group meeting. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks, and keep on scripting in the free world, you know?
Woohoo! Thanks, everyone.
So take care.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Stephen. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, you're welcome. Bye.
Bye.